Hello, welcome to this December 2016 Get Started with CyVerse webinar. I'm Jason Williams, coming to you from Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, New York. Thank you for joining us for the next hour. This webinar is a chance for us each month to introduce new users to CyVerse, to the products and services that we offer, and to interactively answer questions. I'm going to be going over just a brief presentation on the history of the project, a little bit of a background, an overview of some of the capabilities and features of the platforms we offer, and then I'll give you a series of hands-on demos that are designed to get you started doing everything from uploading your data, sharing those data, doing some analyses, and also using our cloud platforms. Before I actually get started with the webinar, I want to familiarize you with a few elements of the Adobe technology that we're using to broadcast this webinar. First of all, at the bottom of your screen, you should see that you have the ability to ask questions at any time. And off camera, I can actually see any questions that are posted. So at any time that you have a question, please go ahead and just type that in, and I will go ahead and stop and answer that. Also, the video that you're watching, you can view this at multiple resolutions. So if your bandwidth is not that high, you may want to actually click on the video screen and you can choose the bandwidth that's appropriate for your connection. Above my head, probably actually on this side, you'll see some buttons that allow you to make the video itself full screen. And this will be useful when I switch to my computer. I'll have some demos, and you may see those a little bit better by viewing things on the full screen mode. Finally, this webinar is recorded each month and it's posted shortly to YouTube. So if there's anything that you miss, you can feel free to look at that recording once it's available. You'll get an email as soon as it's posted. Okay, so what we're going to do here is just go ahead and get started with a little bit of a background. I have a couple of slides prepared, so I'm going to switch to that and tell you a little bit about the project itself. It's quite a big project, and so it's hard to know all the pieces and elements right away. Many of us, as I see from the poll there, get to know about CyVerse from word of mouth, so I'm going to just give you a little bit of a background. Okay, so CyVerse has a vision as a project, and that project's vision is to transform science through data-driven discovery. So giving you the tools that you need to allow the data to make those discoveries that you're looking for possible. The mission and the way that we actually enable data-driven discovery for the people that use CyVerse is by building a national cyber infrastructure for life science research and also training folks in its use. We're more than 30,000 users, really probably closer at this point to 40,000 petabytes of data and hundreds of publications, courses, and discoveries that people have been able to use by taking advantage of the CyVerse capabilities. Many of you may know that prior to this year, we were known as iPlant Collaborative, and in fact, in 2008, the project was funded. The project was renewed in 2013 with a broader scope of really providing cyber infrastructure for life science, and we're still getting bigger and better, so to speak. In 2016, we adopted the name CyVerse really as a reflection of the fact that we are doing quite a bit of work that's broader than the original mission of serving the plant sciences. Really, the things that we produce are available to everyone. The project itself is funded entirely by the National Science Foundation. So it's really important for our users to understand that, because actually we are your colleagues, we're your collaborators. When we present these tools, these platforms or services, there's no direct cost to you. You don't pay or swipe your credit card to use these. We are funded by NSF. It's $100 million in investment, really for you to leverage. And so we also want you to think about us as a collaborator in that sense. We also are open to users all across the globe. There are people who tune into these webinars and use our products. We are definitely in the spirit of collaboration. And we also appreciate it when our users cite us. So if you look on the link that was posted on your screen, you'll see it again, or you'll get other opportunities to, when you publish, let people know that you've used CyVerse. That helps us to demonstrate the impact of our products and services. I used a word previously, which was cyber infrastructure. So what is cyber infrastructure? Well, cyber infrastructure is nothing you're not already familiar with or probably using in some way on a daily basis. We all need to make use of data storage, software, high-performance computing perhaps, but it's really organizing those things and even providing the people who help you to really leverage a unified platform and accessing your data, your storage, your software, high performance computing. And when you organize, when you put things together in the right way, our mission has been, and we think we've achieved it to a large extent, is that we enable people to solve problems of size and scope that would not otherwise be solvable. So in other words, pardon me there, the research that you want to address with CyVerse, we hope that you're able to ask and even answer bigger and better questions. So these are, breaking it down in a nutshell, some of the things that you have access to with CyVerse. So I just mentioned that. And the other thing that's really important, and again, one of the reasons behind adopting a new name, is that we support all domains of life science. So it's really a platform that's built for data. If you have multiple data types, you really will be able to find tools and resources that you can use. This is a quick glance, and we're going to go into a little bit of detail in just a few moments on the so-called CyVerse product stack. So at the top are things like the cloud, atmosphere, the discovery environment, our web interface. We're going to get demos of those in just a moment. Beneath it are all sorts of products and services, which depends on really what type of a user you are. If you are a bench biologist, then many of these products or services are things that you will never directly interact with. But if you are a developer, if you're a bioinformatician, you also have the ability to play in direct access to, for example, high-performance computing through things like the CyVerse APIs. So really, it's a complete product stack that allows you to have the services and functionality that you need. And it's quite flexible because, again, if you are a developer, you can have access to those things. Bioinformatician, you can have access to those services in a really customizable way. But if you're a bench biologist who's just assembling her first genome, just working with his first RNA-seq data set, many of these web products are really user-friendly, super easy to use, and can give you access to resources and tools you may not have had available at your institution. Just a quick note, I'm almost done with this presentation on sort of the history of the project, but we feel it's important for people to know. CyVerse was actually very much built out of the community. So back in 2008, when the whole concept and the buzzword big data was just coming into focus, certainly for sciences, we really knew and we're formed with the spirit of really allowing the community to determine what are the products and tools we offer. The priorities that the communities identified back in 2008 are very much the priorities that we're doing today. So not quite 10 years, but several years later, many people are really still concerned with these basics. De novo assembly, reference guide assembly, but also especially now RNA-seq, ChIP-seq, sort of multi-omics, all of those things that the users want in the genomics landscape are things that we provide. It's important, though, to realize that CyVerse is more than just genomics, and really any type of data set or bioinformatics data challenge you can really come to us for, but still genomics is a big driver of these things. The other thing about CyVerse is that we ourselves as a project are a collaborative and virtual organization. So again, a little bit of the historical background. Most of the folks are at the University of Arizona, and then we have also PIs and resources at Texas Advanced Computing Center, Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, and UNC Wilmington. There are also other sort of CyVerse offshoots, if you will. So CyVerse UK provides those resources across the UK, and that's collaboration funded by BBSRC. Okay, so that was a little bit of the background of the project itself. I just want to now transition to the point where we can actually get to know the individual products or tools or services that you can use within CyVerse. The analogy that I sometimes use is you can think of us as Lego blocks. We have built 85 or maybe even 95 of the pieces, 95% of the pieces that you need. We stacked a lot of them together, but sometimes you may want to customize them. Really, the whole idea of CyVerse is that you take what you want and you can leave the rest. So we hope we provided a wide variety of the ordinary types of analyses tools that most people will want, the services, things like data storage that people want. If you don't find what you need there, then we'd love for you to tell us about that so that we can expand what we're able to offer. But let me give you a little bit of an intro to those actual tools and services themselves. Okay. So the first one that's really important is certainly the data store, the ability to store and manage your data. This data store gives you the ability to upload really just about any size data set and share it instantly with any collaborator anywhere in the world. Now, everyone does have an initial 100 gigabyte allocation. You may already know that you need a larger allocation, and so you can just request that. Again, it's no extra cost, but you do need to provide us with a bit of justification. The data are automatically backed up, and as I'll show in some of the demos, it's really pretty easy to share and download those data. So this is really thinking about your data management plan for a project. We provided a lot of those things right out of the box. The next thing is the discovery environment. We're also going to do a demo on this in just a second. This is a web interface to the bioinformatics applications that I think are most commonly used. It's a platform, and you can really run almost any bioinformatics application. If you don't see the tool, again, let us know and we can help you install it. It's also integrated with our HPC applications, and as I said, you can bring your own tools. You can extend it. Atmosphere is our cloud product, and if you've never used the cloud before, we'll talk a little bit about why you should. You have access to hundreds of virtual machine images, and again, it's fully integrated. The APIs are not going to be demoed today, but they are really important for people who want to customize CyVerse resources, so it's science as a service. You can define your compute and storage resources, and you can build your own sets of custom workflows. DNA Subway is really a wonderful tool for education. It allows you to bring bioinformatics into the classroom. This is really a wonderful way to get students involved in bioinformatics and analyzing real data. BISC is for working with image data, so it supports hundreds of different types of image formats, and you can manage hundreds, thousands, even millions of files with a system like BISC. So it's really, again, pretty custom and pretty powerful for looking at image data, phenotypes, geospatial data, a variety of data sets you might be interested in. Okay, so that was the high-level 5-minute overview, if you will, of CyVerse and the many products that we offer. The next thing that we're going to do is a series of demos that are going to help you get started. As I mentioned before, this is recorded, so this will be posted to YouTube shortly after. So if you miss something, please don't worry about it too much. You can always go back and watch the recording. Additionally, again, I'll remind you at the bottom of the screen, you have the opportunity to ask questions. We do this live just because we feel that's quite a valuable thing to do, to have your questions answered. So please at any time ask questions. Finally, as you're watching this, you may look at the top of the screen and you'll see a little button where you can make the video full screen. As I'm going to start to really be mostly on my computer, it'll be easier to see some of the demos if you do it that way. Okay. So as I mentioned, the first thing that we're going to be working with is the CyVerse data store. With the data store, you can store any type of file that's related to your research. You can move those files between different CyVerse platforms and automate those transfers. And it really gives you the ability to share those files with lab members, collaborators, and communities. There are multiple ways to access the data store. I'm going to cover all three of these. I'm going to focus or really emphasize CyberDuck because that's the easiest tool to just get started literally within a few seconds. But you also will have the ability to store, share, manage data using the discovery environment. And if you are familiar and comfortable with the command line, we also offer iCommands. Each of these platforms has different features, different things that might be advantageous or disadvantageous. For the discovery environment, it's really, I'm going to introduce that more in depth in a few moments, but it's really easy to upload and download smaller files. If you're working with large files, since this is a web-based interface, it's going to be slower. You're not going to get optimum performance moving large files that way. So we're going to show you the next platform, which is CyberDuck. It really almost operates like a Dropbox, if you will, where you can just drag and drop files and folders. There's no size limit, and it's really easy to use on the desktop. And I'll also show you iCommands. So if you're into scripting and you want to automate things, this is really a wonderful tool. I will just briefly show that, since that's not usually the largest segment of the audience, but it is quite powerful. And even if you've never really used the command line before, it doesn't take too much to get started with that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is show you CyberDuck and iCommands, and I'm going to go ahead and switch now to my web browser, and I want to point out where some of these things are. So if you go, this is the home page of CyVerse. So again, you may not want to follow along with me, or you may want to follow along with me. I just want to show you where everything is. So in this case, when we're talking about the data store, you can actually click on the data store icon on the home page. It'll give you a little bit of a background, answer some common questions about that. What I'm going to go down here is to this particular set of links at the bottom where it says ready to get started. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this Manage Data Basics. And the one that I'm going to focus on is CyberDuck. So here it gives you the instructions. Again, a little bit small. I just try to make it bigger for you. And I'll talk about using CyberDuck with a CyVerse account. CyberDuck is actually a standalone tool which you will download. You could come to this particular wiki page, and essentially it will go through everything from going to the CyberDuck webpage and downloading it to getting installed. So this is just what that CyberDuck software looks like, the webpage. We're going to pretend that you've downloaded it and that you follow the installation instructions. I've got it running here on my Mac. Okay. I cannot make this look bigger, so again, hopefully you're watching the video at full screen. If I actually open CyberDuck again, I'll show you, I think, what it looks like. I think I have to ask for a new window. When you first start it and you've properly set it up, you'll have what's called a bookmark or connection to the CyberDuck resource, at CyVerse. So you'll have this bookmark, you'll enter your credentials once and you'll connect. After about 20 seconds, you will actually get what we have on the right, which is actually, I'm looking at files that exist only on CyVerse, in the CyVerse data store. So I have files or folders. I could select a file and I could drag it over to my desktop, in this case. When I go to drag it over, and let's actually see that I did that correctly. There we go. A new window is going to open, and it's going to ask me, well, it's now asking me to clean up some old stuff. I'll say, yeah, why not? This window is going to open, and then basically I see the progress of this transfer. So it'll take a few seconds. It'll log in. I happen to be on wireless, so that's not the smartest, but you will see the progress, and you can move those files quite easily. If I were to create a file or a folder on my desktop, let's just do that really quick. Okay, let's say I had a file and I wanted to take this empty file and move this onto my CyVerse data store. I would go ahead and drag this on the left-hand side to CyVerse, and you would see that that would continue there. So at the same moment, you see a download happening, you see an upload happening. I think you get the idea of that you're able to just really drag and drop files and folders. This is really nice because you could have the opportunity, if you want to cancel something, or you want to restart it, or you want to make some adjustments, you can do that. So you have the ability to stop, resume, reload. This is a really facile way of transferring data. The other thing that's good about it is that on a good connection, certainly a wired connection, you can estimate that you transfer about 100 gigabytes of data within 30 minutes. So that's pretty useful for the types of everyday biological data sets I'm sure that most of us are using. So really, CyberDuck is quite easy. Drag, drop, upload and download, as easy as you're using Dropbox or some other tool. It's available for Windows and for Mac. I believe there is not a version yet that's running for Linux. Okay, so the next thing that I'll show you pretty quickly is how to do this on the command line. To do that, I'm going to go head back to the computer and just close what's going on with CyberDuck. If I actually go back to this window in the wiki that I had open, which was managing your data, you'll see that there's another link there for iCommands. And for iCommands, again, with a CyVerse account, I could click on that, and it will go through the instructions on downloading iCommands and taking care of everything from installing it on your computer. This is a command line program. The first time you run it, you will have to enter a couple of different configuration configuration items, but after that you'll be able to just use it. I'm going to go ahead and open up the terminal. Let's choose one that's a little bit easier to see. Okay. Now iCommands is already installed on my computer. So many of the iCommands work just like Linux commands. Instead of doing an ls for Linux, which displays the contents, I'm going to do ILS, and then I will see this is actually everything that is in my CyVerse data store. So what I was just showing you before in CyberDuck is here. If I wanted to move, for example, there's a folder, VCFs. If I want to move that onto my desktop, I could do an iget command. Let's move that up there. And I would do iget -r for recursive, progress, verbose, and also do time. And I could get .vcfs, and I could say, well, download that to my desktop. Okay, I hit enter, and then actually, almost before I can see where the folder is, on my desktop there's this new folder called VCFs, and I've got whatever was in that was in that folder. So using iCommands is really as simple as just doing a couple commands. All of those commands are really documented for you on the wiki. So uploading, downloading, working with metadata, all of that is possible with iCommands. So I'm going to go back to the CyVerse homepage and just remind you, if you want to find any of this, just go ahead and look on the data store link and you'll be able to get access. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is talk about, and it's good that I'm on the CyVerse homepage, I want to talk about sharing data with other users, because that's the other really powerful thing about CyVerse. So in order to do that, just give me a second here as we are resetting. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and click on the discovery environment. And from the discovery environment, I have the ability to log in here. So we're just going to go ahead and click Launch DE. I'm going to log in with my CyVerse credentials. And it'll just take a moment. It'll go ahead and log in. Okay. All right. So this is the CyVerse. This is the CyVerse discovery environment. From the discovery environment, I have the ability to do quite a number of different things, including logging in and viewing the contents of my data store. Just give me a second here. My screen is resetting. Let's see. Okay, sorry about that. From the CyVerse data store, I'm going to go ahead and click on any one of these apps, but right now I'm just going to focus on data. And from data, I actually get, and I can make this slightly bigger, I actually get to see the contents again in my data store. So if I click on my name, my username, Williams, I'm going to see everything that I just saw on CyVerse and saw on iCommands. These are various folders, files. If I click on a file, I can get some information on it. So let me select a file. On the right-hand side, you can see when that was modified. If I want to, my permission, I own this file. It's a FASTA file, etc. So you have a little bit of a summary, including the size, all of those details you expect. This is really following the metaphor of a desktop. Okay, so the next thing is that if I want to take a file and I just want to share an individual file, I can do that pretty quickly. I can go up here to the Share menu and click Create a Public Link and go ahead. Then it opens this window. Again, I can select, okay, this is the file I want to create the link for, and press Create. And when I do that, it creates this URL. I can go ahead and copy that link and do Command-C. And now, if I took this file and gave it to, or that URL and gave it to anybody, click Enter, they would get a dialog asking them, do they want to go ahead and download this particular file. I could say, go ahead and open it. It's a FASTA file. Actually, that's probably a pretty big file, so I'm not sure if I want to download the whole thing. Although it's moving pretty quickly, it'll probably pop up open, and I forgot that one's 100 megabytes. But you get the idea. that file can be shared with a link pretty easily. So it's really easy to share just a simple data set. If I no longer want to share that data with somebody, I click again and go back up to the share menu where it says create link. I can see that link is there. Next to the link itself, and let me zoom in just a little bit, there is this sort of deletion button. I can click on that, delete, and then that link would no longer work. So if somebody took that URL, I guess if I go back here and typed in that URL again, they wouldn't be able, it would have been sort of missing. It's probably going to take me to that and show me that that doesn't exist anymore, okay? This is a great way for sharing simple, small files. Oh, I guess that was it. Just opening there, okay? So there was that merge.fa. That's a simple way for sharing files, but it's not 100% secure because, you know, anyone who you give that URL to, they could share it with somebody else. So you only want to share files that that you are confident you're comfortable sharing in that way, nothing too sensitive. And once you are done sharing the file, we always recommend that you actually come back and deactivate the link if you don't want anyone to be able to download that after the person you intended it to get will get that. So come back here and control those links. Now, using a link like that, we call them public links, you can share individual files, but you cannot share folders. So if you want to share folders, we're going to show you something else. And in fact, one of the other things is sharing a large file over the internet like I just did. 100 gigabytes, okay, that probably works, but something that's 14, 15 gigabytes, 100 gigabytes, it's likely to break and be a pretty slow download. So what we recommend is sharing within the Discover environment. Now, sharing that link or that URL, the user on the end does not need to have a CyVerse account. What I'm about to show you, where you can share a folder, they do need to have a CyVerse account. So I could go ahead and say I want to share this folder. I can click on that. And then I go up to share, and this time I say share with collaborators. So again, this requires that they have a CyVerse account. If you look, actually, I probably didn't uncheck that other thing, so that's okay. Both of these are now going to be shared. If I wanted to select multiple things, I could do that. And then to share with another CyVerse user, it's as simple as typing in their name. Okay. As you type in their name, you'll probably find them with their institution. You can click on that. And now you can decide how you want to share it with them, with what level of permission. So the way that sharing in CyVerse works is that you assign people permissions to your data set, whether they can read, write, or own those data. What does actually mean if I go back, let me go back to the wiki. And I'm just going to search for sharing permissions, and hopefully it comes that up, yeah, right at the top. When you share something, depending on what level of permission, people can do various things. So read permission is the most restrictive. It doesn't allow them to rename or move or delete those files. If you give someone own permission, they can even rename those files, move those files, or delete those files. So be very careful not to give own permission to someone you don't absolutely trust, because they could take ownership of those files and move it, and then you'd have to ask them where they move it to, did they accidentally delete it, etc. So things are set up in such a way to enhance security and make it easy for you to control your data and how you share those data. Okay, if I really wanted to share this with Cornell, I would click Done. I always use him as an example, so I'm not going to click Done this time. Let me also note that if you were sharing this with somebody, you could come back and you could click the little X next to their name and you'd remove access. And whatever operation you do, whether you're adding or you're removing, you click Done, and then you get a notification up in your notifications window. And once that operation, that sharing or unsharing is complete, it usually takes on the order of a few seconds. When something is shared with you, it shows up in this folder called Shared With Me. In the Shared With Me folder, there are already things that are shared with everybody within CyVerse, so don't get too confused if you already see quite a number of things. There are some things that are just shared with everybody. Okay, so let me go back to my home there. That's really all that I'm going to show you in terms of getting started with sharing data. There's a ton of other stuff that I wish I had time to show you, but then this webinar would last much longer. I'll mention that up here there's some other menu features like uploading or data. You can also import data from a URL if you have a URL you'd like to put in. Under these other menus, there are a lot of things that you'd expect, like the ability to create new folders or even empty files. There's also the ability to do some edits, downloading, sharing we covered, and one that's really spectacular is metadata. So within the discovery environment, within the data store, you have the ability to use metadata. If I search for something like the name of a genus that I've worked on, I might pick up some folders and files that are related to that, but I can actually make things a lot more sophisticated. If I go back up to this folder, this funnel icon, I can actually search for things like metadata. Let me just search for things that are labeled with the genus and the value Dioscorea. I can actually search. So I could search for everything that's this genus, this species. I can arbitrarily assign any type of metadata. All of my forward Illumina reads that are in the 100 and whatever type of formatting, 72 base pair reads. I could arbitrarily assign metadata to every single file within the discovery environment and then return very granular search results for that. There are a variety of templates that you can download in the metadata folder, and just check out some of the resources online about the metadata. You'll be able to see how that works. Okay, so we need to, at this point, move on. The next thing I'm going to talk to you about is the discovery environment as actually an analysis tool, more than just sharing and managing your data. So let me show you one or two slides to orient us, and we'll actually come right back to the discovery environment. We're going to do an analysis. Okay, so let's go back and find those slides. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, the discovery environment is a platform, and you can run almost any type of bioinformatics application. It's integrated with the data, as you just saw, and also there are high performance applications, and you can add your own tools as well. We've covered data, so I don't need to emphasize what goes on there. The next two features we're going to use are the applications themselves. We won't have time to actually build a workflow, but there are possibilities to build simple workflows or to modify and integrate new applications. And we will also see a little bit about how you monitor jobs, the analyses that you've done, cancel or relaunch, and also see a detailed job history. Okay, so I'm going to do a demo. In this demo, we're going to just do a multiple sequence alignment. It'll be pretty quick. We're going to take unaligned DNA sequences in FASTA format and just create a multiple alignment using an application called Muscle. So let's go back to the discovery environment, or the DE, as we often call it. Back in data, let me just show you the data we're using. It's in community data. Actually, if I go to favorites, I think I favorited this folder. You can favorite folders here. It's in this folder called DE Walkthrough, which is in community data, iPlant training. And there's this set of FASTA files. So I just want to show you, here's what happens when you open up a file. So there we go. There's some sequences. We're going to use those in just a moment. So let me close this. And now let me go to apps, and it's going to open up the application menu. First thing it opens to are applications that you've built yourself. You could see these have a lock, so they're all private. They're not shared with anybody. But I can go ahead and just search apps, and I'm going to search for Muscle. And when I search for it, I am wanting, in this case, to use Muscle 3.8.31. Your search results may look different because I have a couple things in my tool bucket that are private. But we're looking for this one, 3.8.31 by Sheldon McKay is the integrator. It's got some stars there. People can rate whether the app worked for them. If you're not sure what the app does, you can click the little info button and you can get an idea of what this application does, what version the application is, etc., under that tool information. So all the things you'd need to do some reproducible science here. But actually, to use the app, you can click on the app name and it's going to open up a new menu. So let me close the app catalog. And this is what every single application in the discovery environment looks like. It's this sort of accordion menu of different steps to move through the application. So I'm going to go ahead and give my analysis a name. I'm just going to do an underscore December 2016 underscore demo. I'm going to say this is a demo for the December. Okay. And when you go through this, okay, you have the ability to add notes, and that's super important because when you are doing bioinformatics, it's very easy to just click lots of buttons and not have an idea of whether you are documenting what you're doing. So this allows you to keep a lab notebook. You have the ability to decide where the output will go. I usually just leave it in by default analyses. You could change the default up here in preferences where your default app is. So for example, suppose that you created a folder, and in that folder you put or you gave that permission to read that folder to everyone in your lab. Then you could ask everybody, please make sure you always output to a shared lab folder, for example. I'm just going to leave it in my defaults, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. The next thing in this app is required, so the next step here is to select input data, so I'm going to go ahead and browse. It's going to open to the last place I chose from, which happens to already have that DE sample plant, so I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Next thing is sequence type. As we saw a moment ago, it's DNA, and I can click Launch Analysis to go ahead and launch this app. When I click Launch Analysis, I'll get a notification on my screen once that job has been launched successfully. So there we go, it's launched. And now, in order to see the progress of it, I can go ahead and click on Analyses. So Analyses is a history of what's going on, what analyses you've done previously. As you go through, you can see those analyses and their status. If you ran an analysis, let me select this one, and you wanted to stop it, you could go ahead and cancel it. If you wanted to see info about that analysis, you could click on Info. This one doesn't give you anything that's too helpful because it's just one of the metadata tags for this job ID. But the one that's more useful is the View Parameters, and you can click on that. You could see exactly what file you used as an input, for example. In fact, if I clicked on this file, it would take me to it. Imagine if you have 1,000 file names with just long strings of zeros and ones and alphanumerics. You could easily not have to guess at what files you used. Also, all the settings, my setting for this was sequence type was DNA. On an application like this, it's not very sophisticated. But let's see, the last time I ran something, here's a top hat job. If I select that and go View Parameters, now those parameters are really helpful. And in fact, I can save these to a text file, so I don't have to go back and guess about what parameters I used, what files I used, etc. If I wanted to relaunch a job, in fact, let's go ahead and relaunch that top hat job. I could click on Relaunch. Rather than clicking and going through every single step to change one parameter. Let's say I wanted to go through and make the anchor length 7 instead. Relaunching populates the app with all of the things all the settings that you chose previously, and then you could just make slight adjustments. It's really a time saver. I'm going to refresh this because I've already seen the notification in the background that my job is complete. So now that it's complete, I can go ahead and click on that job name itself, and it's going to go ahead and navigate exactly to the outputs of that job. And there they are. If I click on one of those line sequences, there in fact is my aligned sequence. Okay, so pretty nice, pretty easy to use, I hope. That is how applications within the discovery environment work. So if you kind of understood the theme of going ahead and selecting the app, selecting the data, and just following the steps, every single app, whether it has 2 steps or 20, works very much the same way. So command line apps, which majority of bioinformatics applications actually only exist at the command line, you can all use them in the discovery environment. And again, if you don't see an app that you want, there are pretty routine ways to get those integrated. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. There is one more demo I have to show you. And let's pull up the slides here. Okay, so the next demo is on Atmosphere, which is our cloud computing resource. Atmosphere gives you access to hundreds of virtual machine images. I'm going to define some of these terms in a moment. It really allows you to customize your software setup, and it's integrated again with everything in CyVerse. But first, let me answer the question that maybe you've been asking yourself: what is cloud computing? To answer that, I'm going to give you an analogy and also talk about two important pieces of vocabulary, two terms. One term is image and the other term is instance. So we're going to talk about those, define those, and explain what cloud computing is. So the analogy part is something I think most of us have gone through, where you buy a computer and now you have the old computer, you have the new computer, and you want to take things from the old computer and put them on to the new computer. So what do? You go ahead and you take off the documents and files and you put them onto a backup hard drive. So you copy all those individual files, images, all sorts of different things onto your backup. But there's a specific type of file that you could make, which is a complete backup of everything on your system. And that type of file, or that type of backup, is called an image file. And an image file contains everything: your operating system, all of the parameters and installations that you've done. Everything is recreated on that image file. And so on the new computer, documents and that you would have copied from a hard drive, well, those are the same documents. But if you take an image file and you put that image onto the new computer, if you re-image the new computer, then your new computer would be a complete clone of the old computer. Everything, no need to install or download new things. Your background on the desktop, the images of your cat, all of those things would all be as they were on the original computer. So an image file contains individual files like PowerPoint slides, but an image file also contains an operating system, all the settings and parameters. So image is a specific type of file that's really a complete clone of a system. The next thing is instance. So physically on the CyVerse cloud, we have disks, we have CPUs, we have RAM, all of those things. And when you come to use the cloud, you're asking us to apportion a certain amount of those resources to you for a temporary amount of time. So you tell us how much you need, and then you also, if you're going to use a computer, you need to have operating system installed, so you need to tell us what image and what tools. And once you have all those things together, you have what's called an instance. An instance, pardon me, also known as a virtual machine, is essentially a computer, an on-demand computer that exists at an IP address. So this is a tremendous advantage because rather than going out and buying a new computer, if you needed to have access to a computer that had this many CPUs, this much RAM, these particular tools installed, rather than filing a requisition and waiting for that computer to arrive and then using it for a couple of weeks and then you've analyzed your data, it'll be a month before you need it again, you can essentially within a few minutes provision a computer that has everything you need and be able to use it just within moments. So what are some of the use cases and what are the actual configurations of systems you can get from us? You can, first of all, again, choose an existing image or customize one that we've done. You can get up to 16-core, 128 gig machines. We're going to show you that you can access them via the shell or using, if they have a desktop, something called VNC Viewer. And you can also share your image. So once you've installed stuff on a computer, you may want to give other people access to it. This is tremendous, again, for reproducible science. So what are some of the things you can do? You can run the software and analyze the data that are monopolizing your laptop. You can take programs that already have their own graphical interface, those you wouldn't be able to run in the Discovery environment. You can use them on Atmosphere. On an Atmosphere machine, you actually have full administrative access. So it's really easy to install things. If you mess it up, well, you can just start with a new image. It allows you to offer uniform computing. So imagine you are teaching a workshop or a class. You can make sure that every single person using the Atmosphere computers has the exact same software. Also, if you are building your own software scripts, you can make those broadly available to the community by imaging your Atmosphere instance and then allowing other people to reuse that. So I'm just going to give you a quick demo, which is really going to concentrate on how do you launch and connect to an instance. There are various ways to do this. If your instance has a desktop, many of them do, you can use VNC Viewer. All of them you can access through the terminal. On Windows, you might need something like PuTTY, which is a free tool. On Mac and Linux, you already can just use the shell that's provided with your operating system. Okay, so let me show you this. Let's go back and find a web browser. So back on the CyVerse homepage, you could go ahead and click this time on Atmosphere. And down at the bottom, there is a Launch Atmosphere link. And so here's what Atmosphere looks like. These are collections of images. So for example, if I search for something like RNA-seq, I'm going to return things that are listed there. So if something has RNA-Quest installed, Trinity and Trinitate, you can see that things are, a lot of things are previously installed. Let me make sure I'm logged in here. So on the upper right-hand side, I'm just going to click Login. I think it should recognize my credentials. Okay, so when I come, this is my Atmosphere sort of dashboard. I can see what I'm using currently in terms of resources. I can see things I've previously launched, etc. And I can also go ahead and say I want to launch a new instance. Then I can search for something. Let's say I want to just use Trinitate, or let's say I want to use Trinity. Do an RNA or do a transcriptome assembly. I might find something. So there is a particular version of Trinity. I could click on that. This one uses quite a bit of resources, so I can go ahead and say launch. I could then say, in this case, I'm going to switch. You guys won't have this problem to the Tucson cloud, and I can try to ask for a certain amount of resources. Now, the resources on Atmosphere are limited. If I go over my allocation, I need to ask for help or ask for an additional allocation. Also, not every single image or instance is available at the same moment. If this was ready to go, I can click Launch, and it would go ahead and launch. If you need help or you need more resources, you can go ahead at the top and click on Help, and you'll see how to process that request. But let's say you went ahead and you clicked Launch, your instance would be available in a project. So I'm going to go ahead to a project here. And once that instance is ready for you to connect to, it usually takes 10 or 15 minutes. You would see that the instance is active and you have an IP address. So I launched this one a few moments ago, so I'm just going to copy that IP address. This has a desktop, so I'm going to open this free software, VNC Viewer, and go ahead and paste in that IP address followed by :1. This is the first time I'm connecting to it, so I got to say yes. Enter my CyVerse credentials. Okay, and now I am actually connected. In fact, let me adjust the quality here so it looks a little bit better. Let's do it this way. There we go. Okay, I'm connected to my Atmosphere instance. So this is a completely virtual computer. I could do anything that I would do in a normal computer. It's just happening in the cloud. So I could go ahead and click on a folder and examine a data set. I could say, well, you know, I want to use RStudio, so I could double click there and start a new session of RStudio. I could actually, I don't have time to show you today, but I could share an instance with another user, and we could do things together and view the same desktop. So it's really tremendously powerful. I also mentioned you could connect via the terminal. So if I go to this terminal that's open and I connect SSH, my CyVerse username, at that IP address and hit enter, I can say yes to go ahead and connect. Then I'm going to have to enter my CyVerse credentials, which, did I type that correctly? No. That's better. And now I'm connected to Atmosphere. You know, if I went ahead in the shell and just said, okay, there on the desktop is the folder that I just created. Okay, so you have the ability either via the terminal or via the VNC to actually use that computer. So it's a pretty sophisticated thing, but it's really super powerful that you can just connect to this computer at will. If I go back to my dashboard, I actually click on that name, I could see some details about this particular instance. If I was going to walk away from this for a while and come back to it, I could stop or suspend this instance because I am spending down my allocation. Everyone has a time amount or limit per month that they're assigned. You can always ask for more, but you're assigned a limit. If I have installed some new software, I might want to image this so that the next time I can just restart a computer that has all of that work saved, everything is installed. Once I'm done with this, I would go back and I would say, well, I'm done with this, and I could go ahead and say delete this instance. I have to be very careful because once I delete the instance, everything is deleted. If I had data I wanted to save, I would want to either transfer that data back to my CyVerse data store. I have to manually do that. Or I could create a volume on Atmosphere, and all of those things are in the documentation. So you could go to help and you could get a little bit more information in the user manual about moving data off your instance. But once you are done, we do ask that you come back and you click delete. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this instance because I'm not going to use it, and it will be gone in a few moments. And it will reopen my allocation in terms of CPUs and disk space assigned, and as long as I have time left, I can go ahead and keep launching instances until my time runs out. And of course, you get a renewal every month. Okay, so that's happening now. I'll let that happen in the background. I'll probably be disconnected from those in a moment anyway. So the last things I want to show you are just where to go for help. So I want to remind you that if you come to the CyVerse Learning Center on the homepage, there are some additional getting started guides. You can see links to tutorials and videos and documentation. Also, upcoming events will tell you about workshops and webinars. You can also request those. And finally, last slide, acknowledge at least the executive team at each site, but there are really dozens of other people who make CyVerse. And with that said, we are done with this month's webinar. I would invite another few seconds of questions at the bottom if you do have any. But if you don't have any questions, I'd ask you also to stay on for a very quick survey that will happen after this. We really thank you for being a CyVerse user.